Reload. Perfect shot, man.
This truly is a trophy, not because of what it is, but for what we had to accomplish to get it.
The pain train, I love it.
Feel how your heart rate is right now? This is what elk hunting's like. Now you gotta make a shot.
Welcome to the Geared for the Outdoors podcast, brought to you by Pnuma Outdoors. I'm your host and Pnuma team member, Will Cooper. The Geared for the Outdoors podcast is dedicated to bow hunters and all those who love the outdoors. Our mission here is to bring you information from industry experts and veteran hunters that can help better prepare you for your next hunt. We understand that time in the outdoors is precious. That's why our goal is to bring you gear that is built to over-deliver, designed to outperform, and proven to outlast. To learn more, head to our website at pneumaoutdoors.com, check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We appreciate y'all listening in, and we hope y'all enjoy. What's up, y'all? We are sitting here at Total Archery Challenge again up at Park City, Utah. We're sitting here with one of our Recon team members, Chad Allen Jones. He's a Texas native just like myself, and we're just taking the time to sit down so we can introduce Chad as a Recon team member to you, the listeners, and dive into Chad's Texas whitetail record, right, with the bow?
Yeah, I got pretty lucky, but anyway, thanks for having me on. As you said, obviously born and raised in Texas, and that's home. It'll always be home for me, and so my passion is whitetail because obviously where I live, which is, about 30 miles north of Dallas, we don't have elk or, free-ranging access or anything like that. So grew up hunting whitetails and wild hogs, and that's been my passion since I was little. Obviously, started hunting with my dad. He was dragging me along at 4 years old, and so I was immersed in this lifestyle at a very early age, and just shadowing him and kind of watching tricks of the trade and learning it, and that progressed into just being eat up with it, and so to answer your question, so that 30 some odd years later, that led to shooting a buck of a lifetime for me, which ended up netting out 233 and 7/8 Boone and Crockett, and so
low fence, right?
Low fence, free range. Yeah, we don't have any high fence ranches up in the area that I live, and so so mega giant, and it's actually listed right now as number 3 all-time largest ever killed with a bow in Texas.
God.
Yeah, very lucky.
Now, what do you do for work?
So I'm actually a project director for a commercial construction company, and so we primarily do industrial buildings and distribution buildings, things like that. But we'll sometimes work on retail, medical offices, things of that nature, but more big scale projects.
How'd you get into that?
Well, it's funny. I actually went to college at Texas Tech. And, I got my Bachelor of Science degree, and I had a minor in nutrition. And so when I graduated college, I wanted to do something that was, fitness related because, I'd played sports my whole life, and, and I just enjoyed the whole fitness aspect of it all. But getting out at that time, there weren't a whole lot of jobs. I ended up taking an internship job right at one of my last semesters of college for Tom Landry's fitness facility there in Dallas. And it was kind of one of those things where everybody there either had their master's or their doctorates going into like exercise testing and prescription. But we worked with like the Dallas Stars, the Dallas Cowboys. So it was really cool. I enjoyed the experience of it, but it was kind of one of those things. They were like, well, hey, you're kind of going to have to go back to school and get your master's. So I was like, oh, man, I really don't want to – I just got out of school. I don't really want to go right back.
Don't want to go back.
Yeah, and then I had a buddy that owned a hyperbaric medicine facility down in San Antonio, and he was like, hey, I'll get you a job coming on working with me, but you got to go back and get your dive technician's license for working on, putting people into the hyperbaric chamber, which was then going to take another year of school and training. So I was like, either way, I was going back to school.
Yeah.
And so then I had a good friend that actually owned a construction company, a commercial construction company. And he's like, hey, why don't you come on board and just see how you like it? And so I was like, well, I didn't want to move to San Antonio. I didn't want to go back to school. So I was like, man, I'll try it. And
best of the three options.
Yeah. And so I ended up going in and working on a school, and then just trying to, obviously being out there, just not knowing that trade, obviously, because that's not what I went to school for. I ended up going back to school at night. I'd get off of work, go to, it's a continuing education college, and basically went back and got my associate's degree in construction management, and still doing it today, 16 years later. Yeah. So that's it.
Tell me how you got into Pnuma. Tell me how you met Cody, or where it all started for you.
Well, so that really kind of the deer that I shot, that obviously is my largest deer to date, that kind of opened those doors. So you know, I got invited to the regional awards, which is like my region, you know, that I'm in for Texas. So I won that at regionals, and so since I placed first in that, I get invited to the state awards.
Yeah.
Well, I ended up winning first in the state awards. Damn. And so met a lot of super cool people in the industry at that event, which was down at the JW Marriott in San Antonio, and Cody was there with Trophy Scan.
Yeah.
And so they came in, so like, hey, do you mind if we scan your deer? And I was like, yeah. So obviously we start talking deer hunting, and you know, they were asking the same questions, like, hey, how long you seen this, whatever. And so we just kind of hit it off immediately. And anyway, and so they were like, well, hey, we're acquiring a camo company called Pnuma. Would you be interested in maybe checking out some of the products, giving me your feedback, whatever? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. And so he sent me some stuff, and immediately just fell in love with it. And I was like, man, you know, the only drawback I had, and I was just upfront and honest with him, it was the Terra pattern, which was the original, and it was kind of a more light tan, like desert, like more of your west terrains. Yeah. And I said, man, that just doesn't work for where I'm at, because I'm primarily around the edge of pine trees and cedar trees, you know, evergreens. I was like, so this tan, I'm kind of sticking out like a sore thumb up in a tree on this thing. And so he's like, well, we're working on the Kaza pattern right now. It's in the works and coming out. And he showed me the kind of the front end design of it. And I was like, now we can make that happen. And
now we're talking.
Yeah. And so anyway, so all that got released. He sent me some and never looked back, man. I loved it. I loved everything about all the people that were involved in the company. I mean, such as you, getting to meet you guys. I mean, everybody's just so laid back, down to earth, and everybody just had the same, you know, vision in mind, and has a passion for the same thing. So it just felt like a family, like instantly for me. So
I love to hear that.
Yeah, that's kind of how the original meeting all kicked off. So
you know, being a Recon team member, you spend a lot of time in the woods, and we rely heavily on our Recon team members' feedback.
Right.
You know, we tell you guys and girls that if we send you a product to test it out and it sucks, we want you to tell us, because that's how we make this product better.
Absolutely.
And if you love it, tell us.
Right.
So we know what works. And then if you've got suggestions, you tell us. And part of what we do is we really rely on you guys to listen to y'all, because you have your boots on the ground more than we do. Like, yeah, right. we still hunt. You know, I would say majority of everybody, in fact, everybody that works for us hunts.
Right.
But we don't spend as much time in the woods as you guys do. So what does it mean to you, being a Recon member, getting to work with the company on that level?
Well, it's really kind of a dream come true, you know, because, I mean, obviously you have the visionaries of the company that, you know, kind of everything that goes into it, lays it all out. And so it's then, you know, it's designed and it's implemented and it's put out there. But, you know, we may get kind of the prototype to check out and say, hey, what can you change? And the awesome part about it is you're right. You know, you take some of the guys that, like Fred and Joe and these guys that are putting in a tremendous amount of days in the field, that's what you're relying on. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And so it's not like you go, well, I can just go home and change clothes or whatever. I mean,
No.
these have to perform at the highest level, when you're going for weeks at a time, and you're relying on those to keep you warm, keep you dry. And so you find any little imperfections and you're going, man, everything is good, but I would change this. And the cool part is you can relay that information, and the design team goes back and says, hey, we're going to change this, make this better. Cause I've had, two recon guys come back and say the same thing as, hey, they didn't like this. Cause not everybody's the same. Like something maybe one guy may have a preference on the placement of something over somebody else. And so you can't just constantly, custom design a piece of clothing for every single guy out there, but you're trying to do what makes majority fit and what seems to be most logical. So, I mean, it's been pretty awesome to work on that ground floor and, and just have some insight, but people that will listen to that, and so it's pretty phenomenal.
What's been your favorite piece of Pnuma clothing so far, or suit, and why?
Well, the Waypoint is originally what I started with, and I liked it. But the Selkirk quickly kind of superseded that just because of the all-around, weatherproofing of it.
The 3M spray on it.
Yeah, is so just for the fact that I don't like being cold, but I definitely don't like being wet and cold.
Mm-hmm.
So when I found something that was a heavier layer, but it was also more waterproof, I was like, man, this is a no-brainer for me, just because you don't want to be stuck somewhere and get wet and get cold. Then you're dealing with a whole lot more problems than just focusing on hunting, and so the Selkirk was amazing for me. But obviously, I would say most of the time when I'm hunting, I don't hunt in conditions that really require that all that much. I mean, I get a few weeks out of the year that it's gets pretty extreme cold.
Except for that snowpocalypse we had in February in Texas.
That was pretty rough. But actually, I went out and did some coyote hunting in that one. Just once the roads were drivable.
Shoot.
Yeah, it was pretty nice.
Sheesh.
But it's the best to be able to track it when there's snow in the ground. We don't
That's
get
true.
that very often in Texas. So, but the merino wool hoodie, that's probably I wear that thing.
Gunnison hoodie
constantly. Yeah,
I love that piece, man.
Yeah.
What hunt are you looking forward to most this upcoming fall?
Well, last year threw a bunch of curveballs, I think probably for majority of hunters, but I had a 2-week hunt to Africa that got postponed. I had a hunt in Kansas that got delayed, so I've actually rebooked that one with a friend of mine in December. So the first week of December, I'm going hunting with Jeff and Hannah Barron and a friend of mine, Cody Cutler, up at his place in Kansas. Yeah, so we were supposed to go last year, and COVID threw a wrench in that.
Yeah, threw a little curveball at everybody.
Yeah, so I'm going there for the first week of December. I've never hunted Kansas, and I've actually got drawn 2 years in a row now. So I'm really stoked about that. And he's got some amazing property in Bourbon County, and they produce some giants out there. So
really?
But for me, it doesn't matter if I see 170-inch, 180-inch deer. It's the fact of just getting to hunt Kansas. It's legendary hunting property. And so that's really what I'm looking forward to the most.
Tell me about the Kansas draw process. It sounds like you got to get drawn for a tag, and then you have to go through guide and outfitter or somebody that has private land that you can hunt on, or
yeah. So Cody actually has private land, and he's got 2 separate units. So in case you don't get drawn one, you got to back up there. So the draw process, it opened like April 1st. You just fill out the application. You make the payment to it, and then depending on how many people get put in and how many get drawn. Now they'll give you preference points, kind of like the way some
Colorado.
others do.
Yeah.
And But anyway, I didn't have preference points because I'd gotten drawn last year, but I didn't go because obviously, and I couldn't give it to somebody. And so anyway, I just got really lucky, got drawn again for this year. But I mean, the draw process was really, really simple. But for people that don't know, like I say, I know that you had recently spoke with Jessica Byers with Huntingful, and they put together a lot of that. They go through all the draw process for every state, for every species. It's pretty amazing. So people can check into that if they're just not sure when the draws are.
Yeah.
I mean, they have all that information laid out. So, but yeah, the draw was pretty simple. Now the hard part is trying to get down there and
put it together,
and get on one. Yeah.
Well, I'm sure you're going to have all the new pieces that we're coming out with in a few weeks that you're going to get to put through the ringer too.
Yeah. Looking forward to that for sure. But,
which piece are you most excited about? I mean, we've already been dropping some stuff to the consumers and some of the listeners we have on here, so we're not really keeping it too hush hush anymore. So feel free to open up. Man,
I'll be honest with you. The Palisade is gonna be fire, dude. I really like that, and then the new pants that'll zip off into shorts. Obviously being a Texas boy, it's
Texas boys like that.
Yeah, it's
wearing with your Chippewas.
Yeah, sometimes you're still hunting in November and it's still 88 degrees outside. Almost 90 degrees. It just so hit or miss, and so. The shorts, I'm gonna look forward to those, especially come dove season. So those are pretty sweet. So I'm looking forward to those as well.
Now we're up here at Park City. This is your second Total Archery Challenge event for the year. What are your thoughts on the events? I know Texas, we got to go out and have a lot of fun. We had a camera crew with us, got some really good content. What do you think about these events?
It's awesome. You're bringing together, like I say, not every person that comes to Total Archery Challenge is a hunter.
Yeah.
But I would say the large majority is. And so you already know that the camaraderie of it all is all people that share the same passions, right? Mm-hmm. And that doesn't matter if you're primarily a bear hunter, an elk hunter, a whitetail deer hunter, mule deer hunter, whatever. I mean, regardless of the species, I mean, everybody is just a hunter, and it brings that community together. And so it's cool. I mean, you can just meet somebody you've never met before and you instantly just have things in common. You set aside I guess what you would consider competitors or competition.
The egos.
Yeah, of like, well, I shoot a Matthews or I shoot a Hoyt or I shoot an Expedition or, I wear KU, I wear Pnuma, I wear whatever. You know what I'm saying? It's like, you kind of just, it's like, guys, nobody cares. You just, you shoot what you like, you wear what you like, you just go out here and have fun and meet a lot of really cool people that enjoy doing the same thing. It's just, I think it's really good for the hunting community.
For sure. It's kind of, deer season rolls around, comes, then you've got a couple of hunting seasons still, January, February time. But we have this lull, and it's a really good time for people to get out, meet, mingle, get to know one another, and it's a great marketing or
absolutely
great networking place.
Yes,
you meet a ton of people here, and I love what you're saying is just coming out here having fun. I feel like a lot of people check their egos and they leave them in the parking lot at the bottom of the mountain,
right? Because
people come up here, and I don't know how many guys just going up and down this practice range I've talked to. Just everybody's so friendly, and I love it.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy because, I mean, you have people here that are professional archers, and you have people here, there was a guy that he just recently started shooting a bow, and he's never shot past 25 yards. And he's on it. Yeah, and so you're kind of, I mean, you'll meet people from every experience level, but they're all here for the same purpose. It's just to have fun and meet other people that like doing the same thing because everybody had to learn somewhere.
Yeah.
And so it's cool to see the little kids, the future generations coming out and shooting. I mean, these things are really cool.
I love that. Seeing the kids with their dads.
Yeah, for sure. And then, there's a lot of women getting into the sport, which is really cool. A lot of wives are showing up with people and shooting. It's just really awesome. I mean, people bringing their whole families. And I agree, you got to think we've got large majority, you got elk seasons coming up.
40-something days.
Yeah, and you've got whitetail seasons coming up. And so this is a great experience, for guys to come out and not only just get the repetitions and shooting, you're shooting at 3D targets, which is going to simulate a lot of times what you're experiencing out in the field instead of just shooting a block in your backyard. And you're doing it with the conditions of, elevation changes. You're dealing with wind, rain, so
I want to touch on that. I want to touch on that because we're both Texas boys. We're both flatlanders. We're 400, 500 foot elevation.
Yeah.
So let's talk on that. Let's talk to the Texan or the flatlander right now that is going on that first elk hunt, mule deer hunt, sheep hunt, but they're coming out west, whatever they're hunting, right?
Right.
How beneficial has this been for you getting up on the mountain? Because I'm guilty of it, and I'll say it on this podcast. When you get in a pop-up blind, do you pay attention to your bubble on your sight?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I practice that way.
Yeah.
I look at my bubble every time.
You do?
I do.
I'm guilty of it. I'm bad when I'm flat.
Well,
I don't.
I will say most people don't,
Yeah.
especially in Texas, because there's really not a need to.
Yeah.
I've just done it because I've just always done it. So it's just part of my process that, I'm making sure that my peep is right. That ring is right on, my sight ring. And I'm making sure my bubble is, that it's just part of my process. But I would say large majority of people probably don't even look at it, wouldn't even know if it's even level.
I look at it little here and there, but I'm super guilty of not checking it, especially like if I'm just shooting in the backyard. I'm bad about it. But I mean, here when you get up on this mountain, like heck, just even the practice range, I mean, you're shooting up a 4, 5, 6, 7 degree angle, which we're not used to.
Right.
And, the angle that you're standing on is completely different on the angle from where your target is. So when you're paying attention to that bubble, you're canning you're looking. It doesn't feel right, but you have to trust the bubble.
Exactly. And so that's I think, and that's why these are so good, is because you don't want to miss that shot or make that mistake in the field on an elk or a mule deer or whatever and go, man, what happened?
Mm-hmm.
You solve the problems out here. You get out here and then it clicks of going, oh, this is why I'm, shooting to the left, or this is why I'm, whatever's happening, and you start troubleshooting that. And plus you're with a lot of other archers that, have a lot of experience that can go, hey, here's kind of what you're doing wrong, or here's what you need to do. And everybody's just there to help each other be successful, and so these events are great. I mean, for things like that, plus, guys that are mountain hunters, that conditioning, making sure you're hydrated, and because if you're not used to that altitude, somebody's hunt can go south real fast if you get altitude sickness and things you're just not prepared for,
Well, this is just a great place to put yourself in check, put your gear in check, figure out how things are going to be operating come September, October, whenever you're headed up to the mountains. But I definitely agree that I think every flatlander, if you can, make your way out to one of these, whether it's Total Archery Challenge.
100%.
What's the other one? Mountain Fest, I think, that's been going around lately. And I think there's even a couple others that are starting to get up and coming.
Right.
But I think everybody needs to do this.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and I'll be honest with you. I mean, Total Archery Challenge is kind of the Super Bowl of these archery events. And, I mean, you've got names across the board from apparel to bows to camping supplies to tents. I mean, everything. I mean, it's awesome. And, but I agree. Everyone should come and experience it. And I can tell you this. If you came to one, you'll leave better than not coming to one.
Big time.
And that's the whole thing, is being successful in the field is all about your preparation leading to that point. And so if you can get into simulation as close to the real thing as you can with practice at an event like this, whether that's altitude, tough angled shots, farther shots than, what you typically range at, it's only beneficial to you. I mean, there's really no negative. There's no downside to it.
No, not at all. Not at all. So You've got, let's see, Kansas Hunt coming up, right?
Yeah, I've got a buddy that's invited me to come up and go elk hunting in September.
Where at?
I don't even know. I know it's public land. I want to say it's right outside of Colorado Springs somewhere. But it's somewhere that he's been hunting for years. He's been guiding up there. And so he actually messaged me like a couple weeks ago and was like, hey, man, you want to come up, public land hunt, over counter tag, just me and 2 other guys. It's a place, on some public land. I'm familiar with guiding around this area.
Yes.
Well, and that's what I told him. I said, man, I was like, let me see if I can move some things around because I would love to get up there and hunt with him because it's been a friend I just haven't seen in a long time because he had moved up there. And anyway, so I'm trying to get that pinned down, and so I've got to make a decision on that here within the next couple of weeks. So possibly that one, and then really just majority of the time I've got a place I hunt up in Oklahoma, so I'll hunt that some. Probably hunt in Arkansas a little bit, and then
back
the rest of
Texas.
my time, especially around that Thanksgiving window when the rut is full kick, full swing for us. Unless I get a mega giant on camera, I probably won't even hunt October, at my place back home.
Let's get back on Texas whitetail for a little bit. I think there's a lot of people that, they've seen you kill some big deer. And right now it's almost the end of July. What's Chad Jones doing to get prepared for Texas whitetail? As far as game cameras, what are you doing to make sure that you're going to hopefully ensure success come fall?
Well, so, I'm on some pretty good properties that I know, has good caliber deer that some may not live on the property, but I know travel through the property. And so I run my Spy Point game cameras all year round. And then so I kind of let those do the homework. At the end of the season, I'll go out and do a little shed hunting, kind of check, trails and rub lines and things and then I make note of that of, hey, what happened during the fall so that I can carry around because those signs won't be there at the beginning of the season.
True.
But a lot of deer are creature of habits and they'll follow those same ridges, those same funnels and things that next fall. And so I kind of use that to position myself going into the next season. So, I'll go in and I'll set up feeders. I'll run a high protein feed all through the spring. So when antler growth is coming in and when fawns are dropping, just for helping any additional nutrition I can to the deer herd. But then as the season comes along, obviously I don't really hunt over feeders. Very, very rarely that I do, just because obviously I'm trying to kill one of the oldest bucks out there. May not be a mega giant, but that's kind of the challenge for me is I want to identify the oldest deer, and that's the one that I want to try to pursue. You know.
I'm a Texas guy, and a lot of people always say like, "Oh, feeders, corn, this and that, blah 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 blah." You said you're not going to try and you really don't hunt over feed. So when you're trying to target these big bucks like this, what are you looking for? Are you looking for trails? Are you finding bedding areas? Are you finding water? What's kind of your regiment? Well,
so that'll depend on the time of the season. If it's early season, I very rarely will hunt mornings. I will normally only do an afternoon sit. Typically trying to sit somewhere in a transition to a food source, whether that's an ag field that's been cut or a food plot somewhere, and trying to catch that buck right before right before dark, traveling through there.
Yeah, because a lot of time they're feeding at the night during summer.
Right.
Or hot times.
Right. Yeah. And so a lot of times I'm trying to catch them that last 15, 20 minutes of daylight, traveling through to that field. Now, I don't want to hunt really necessarily over that food source because what happens? Well, you're waiting on the buck, but does and fawns and small bucks, everything else come to the food source.
Yeah.
Well, you got to get down when it gets dark. Well, what happens when you get down and they see you? Well, you educate the deer.
Every deer out of there.
And so what I want to do is I want to get in a transition between where I think is the bedding for them and where that food source is. And I'll try to find a pinch point, a funnel, a creek crossing, somewhere that I can get in, slip in there, in the afternoon and hunt that portion to where I can hopefully catch them in daylight moving out to that. That way, when it does get dark and I move out, I'm not scaring deer off of the food,
I killed a deer like that last year. I like you, I did not hunt in the mornings, and I found that out the hard way because they're just not moving in the mornings. Either that or they moved back to their bed.
Yeah, most of the time they're back in bed. Yeah, before it's daylight.
Yeah, you're seeing all their I'm guilty of it where I was walking into my stand and trying to in that transition point. It's like they're walking back.
Yeah, they're blowing at you because they see you walking.
I'm seeing lights and I'm seeing their eyes in my headlamp. I'm like, crap! Well, I screwed that one up. So I'm like you. I just start going in the afternoon.
Yep.
What about you start transitioning into the rut, kind of that pre-rut? Are you still where does your thinking go from there? Are you still trying to find that transition area, or what are you looking for? Well,
so that's early season, which is typically starts around October 1st for us. And it's still hot. So I'll either try to find, to either sit on that funnel if it's just bad movement, because sometimes you kind of go, man, my cameras are dead. Like, I don't even know if there's a deer on this place, right? They just don't move. And especially with all the rain like we've had this year, there's so much for them to eat. These mature bucks can get up, move, 50 to 100 yards, sit and eat all the vegetation they want. If there's a water source, drink and just lay right back in bed and experience no danger. They don't put themselves at any risk. And so as the pre-rut starts, which is normally always, it gets really ramped up around the week of Halloween for us. And so that's when all the scrapes start opening up, and so at that time they frequent those rut or those scrapes quite a bit. So I'll make my own licking branches and mock scrapes and things like that, and then put a camera on it. So then, once they start scenting it, they'll come back and check it. And some bucks you'll see they'll repeatedly come in almost like once a day, like to check this, because that's how they're communicating with receptive does and other,
trying to find them.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I'll, I'll set up over those mock scrapes, things like that, and just hoping to catch them come through scent checking it, or them to come scent it. But if I'm not getting a whole lot of movement, I don't want to go sit just to sit. I need to be seeing the activity, because if you're hunting an old mature deer, you might get one opportunity. And if you bust him in that, if the wind direction's wrong, don't sit there. You know what I mean? Like, so you're kind of you're being selective on the days that, that you're going to hunt. And so that's what kind of, builds it into the pre-rut for me, is I kind of make my own scrapes. And then once they start using them, and then I'll let my cameras do the work to tell me how much they're coming in. Yeah. And if they're just sporadic, say they might make one and don't see them come back for a while, then I just kind of let the transition of the rut start kicking in. And then I start focusing on hunting where the does are. Yeah. I'm hunting doe bedding areas, transitions to food sources. If there's, acorns on the ground, things like that, a natural food source, then I'll hunt those. But I don't really want to ever hunt like over a feeder. I mean, big mature deer, you might occasionally catch them,
but they're not going to.
Well, most of the time, if you see them, it's either under the cover of darkness, which does us no good.
Exactly.
And, or you'll see them, but they're kind of going around it, and they're not really necessarily coming in to eat.
They're not
so
interested
much.
in it.
They're just coming in to scent check for the does there.
So for the rut, would you say you kind of hunt the rut like you would the first few weeks of the season, early season? You're looking for that transition from bedding to food, or because essentially food are where the does are going to be, and the bucks are going to be going from does to bed, to bed.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the trick of it is keying in on where the does are bedding, figuring out how to get in between, kind of because the issue is you need to be on the downwind side of a doe bedding area, right?
Yeah.
Depending whether whether it's morning or afternoon, or whether they're coming in and out or going in or whatever. But you need to be on a downwind side usually.
Which is so hard that time of year because you're starting to get all your fronts coming in.
Well, and the problem is bucks typically travel the downwind side.
Yeah.
So they don't actually have to go into the bedding area. They can just run along the south side of it, wind check it, and if they don't smell a hot doe, they just keep on moving. And so, so that's those days, like if it's, kind of a strong wind, it's one of those things to where I'll either have to get on the edge of like a wide open field where I know the does are bedding in one spot, but the buck's not going to walk out in the field to scent check it. He's going to walk kind of right on the edge of the trees.
He's going to edge it
where I'm at, and which, gives me a close shot. So that's actually how I ended up shooting the old 8-point last year, as I was right on the edge. But they had been coming in at the edge of the trees, and these does walked out into this winter wheat field, and he just followed them right out into the field. And he stood there for a long time before he ever walked out. I mean, and it was almost dark. He was, it was full rut, but he still had enough sense to go, man, I don't know about this. But the doe started walking off, and he's kind of like, well, I can't let her go.
With her.
Yeah. And, but yeah, so that's kind of how I approach it. I try to find the doe bedding areas and put myself in the best position. Obviously, you got to pay attention to the thermals. You got to pay attention to the wind direction, and your access, because you're trying to get in close to these bedding areas without the doe seeing you. Because if they run off, then it doesn't do you a whole lot of good.
No,
and so it's a little bit of a chess match. It's kind of tough. You just have to understand your property and the terrain and how to maneuver through it, and then you just pick those days that are good high percentage days.
Well, and I feel like the rut, the deer are either going to a buck that you're after is either going to be really easy to get because he's going to be stupid and you're going to know where he's going to be, or he's going to be really hard. And then I also feel like late season, after Christmas, the rut's pretty much died down at this point. You've got like that 2 weeks left before general season's over. In my experience,
food.
I've actually, I was going to say, I have seen deer, like it almost seems like they've become more dumb and they don't care about the pressure anymore, because at that point they are so run thin from the rut, everybody's tired, and they're just gorging themselves at that point.
And I wouldn't say it's so much. I know exactly what you're referring to.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't say it's that they're less smart than what they were at the beginning of the season, and it's not so much that they're letting their guard down, kind of like they do in the rut. They just lose their minds. I mean, you see deer like run out in the middle of the highway and just staring, like
get hit by an F-250.
But you got to think, when they've run, they've dropped 30-40% of their body weight through the rut, and they're literally starving, and malnourished, and it's about survival at that point.
Yeah.
And so if there is a known food source that's consistent, they understand there's a risk that comes with it, but they're going, if I don't eat, I'm going to die through the winter, and so they'll take that chance. And so when you get late season like that, all bets are off at that point, and you just start hunting, where you've got a quality food source, because they're going to come to it at some point.
What's your favorite time to hunt whitetail?
Man, the rut's just hard to beat. I like the pre-rut, because you'll see some big mature bucks get on their feet, but it's very sporadic.
Yeah.
They're not patternable at that point. Like I say, they might make a scrape, and you're going, oh, man, I got a mega giant here, and then just dries up. I mean, nothing, you know, and you're kind of like, man, what is going on? And so it's just, and deer have different personalities. I mean, there's some that, you'll have a pre-rut and you'll see just about every buck that you're familiar with on your property come through making rubs and scrapes. And then, and then of a big giant that's on there and never have a daylight picture of them, and so it's just, you just kind of have to understand what the herd's doing. And I understand that you're trying to make sense and put the pieces of that puzzle together through the season, the pre-rut, and then November happens and that all goes out the window because you're going, well, this buck I've been sitting here watching, trying to pattern trying to get on. Now all of a sudden 7 miles down the creek on my friend's property, he's got pictures of him or whatever, and
Dude, I've had a deer that's been doing that to me for the past 3 years. He's this freaky wide buck that as soon as, June rolls around, I've got thousands of pictures of this guy. But then I don't know what it is. Right before archery season in Texas starts, he's gone. I don't know where he goes, and we're all low fence, but I don't know where he goes.
So it's funny you say that. Similar scenario happened to me last year. I had a buck that I'd say he was pushing about 190. Had him all June, all July, into the 1st of August.
Then gone.
And so I'm sitting there going, man, I've got 4 weeks left. And he was coming all the time. And I'm like, I'm about to kill a mega giant.
Another big one.
Yeah.
Another to add to the list.
I was like, yeah. Well, and at the time, he was growing. He was still in velvet. And I was like, dude, he might push 200 by the time he's done growing in the middle of August. And so, anyway, so I'm sitting there, just chomping at the bit going, okay, I didn't go in there. I had enough, cell cameras out with battery life in them. I didn't have to go change nothing because I was like, I don't want to pressure him. I don't want him to sense me. I already had stands in good locations for each wind direction already in this area.
Yep.
Because it was actually in the exact same location on the same ridge that I shot my 2018 buck.
Dang.
The 230.
Yeah.
Yeah. And anyway, and so so I didn't have to do anything.
Yeah.
I mean, I was like, man, this is perfect. All I got to do is just wait till
Same
opening
thing.
weekend.
Yeah.
Right. And same deal. August rolls around. All the local farmers started cutting all the fields, all the wheat fields, corn fields, and he was obviously bedding somewhere in the edges of these fields, and it pushed him out. Never saw him again. And so I nicknamed him the Phantom Buck because he just disappeared. And
is he back?
Have not seen him back. But I do have one this year that looks really close to him, but he's probably mid 140s to 150 class, real young deer, but already, split G2s, and he's got kickers, flyers coming off the sides. And so, but I mean, not a shooter, not one that I would prefer to shoot just because, like I say, he's a cool deer, but he's just young. Because he could be the next giant after another couple years. But, so that's probably the similar situation is you're probably getting wherever he's bedding locally, someone's probably cutting those fields or, going in and planting something that's just kind of pushing him around to.
I guess, man, I couldn't tell you because the only thing I can think of is we do have a creek that runs on the back corner of our place that I don't know if maybe there's a doe that comes through every year that he just picks up on that might start to.
Well, their summer range and their home range, or their fall range, are typically they're usually different.
Yeah.
Now I have seen bucks that they've been on our property and never leave. They're there all year long.
I got a couple of those.
And but majority of the time, where you see them in the summer, they won't be there in the fall. Now, it's not to say they won't come back through during the rut.
They do occasionally. I'll catch them.
Yeah, so right now I don't have any just huge deer on camera, but that's not a concern to me because I'm going, well, now when they switch to their summer ranges, we have some areas that are really thick. Yeah. That's perfect for them.
Just go get in.
Because a lot of times right now they're bedding in some of these open timber, open the edges of field edges of fence rows, somewhere that they aren't damaging their horns. I mean, they're going to wait to go to these thick spots.
That's true.
Once they're hard horned, that way they can get in there without damaging them.
Well, and then I know we've got deer that I've never seen before that they just come out of the blue. Like last year, we were hunting. My wife and I we were just going on a doe hunt, and it was towards the end of general. But we were going to get some meat, and she was shooting, and she goes, "Well, what do we do if a big buck comes out?" I said, "Well, we'll just see. You never know." Right. And literally, we had a doe picked out that had come in, and we're just milling around, and she's about to squeeze on this one, and all of a sudden I look over to my right and I just see this mega giant. Never seen this deer before. I have no idea. Probably the biggest deer I've seen out there. And I told her, I said, hold up. She's like, whoa, what? And I go, there's a giant right here. And she looks, and my wife, she's like, oh my God. She goes, what do we do? I said, we're going to play rock, paper, scissors.
Yeah, right.
So we played rock, paper, scissors. I won, but of course I still let her shoot. And we ended up actually not finding that deer. Not a whole lot of blood. So here's the thing though. I think she scraped him right underneath the brisket because I had a deer starting to show up on camera a few weeks ago. Had a cut right on the brisket, and I showed it to her. I said, I couldn't tell yet, but I told her, I said, I think that's him.
Well, one thing about it, those deer, I mean, they're resilient, man.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen, we've had some on camera that have had arrows sticking out of them. We've had some that have full pass-through holes in them that lived. I mean, we've watched them all season just go right on.
They're tough, man. They're tough.
Yeah, it's pretty insane. But yeah, hopefully he's still there.
We'll see what happens.
Bigger than ever.
We'll see. Well, man, let's give the listeners. We're rolling into deer season. We're rolling into elk season. Hunting season is about to kick off here in the next month or so. What for that Texas whitetail guy, or even kind of like that southern southeast whitetail guy? What is a tip or bit of information nugget that you can give the listeners to get ready for that first week?
That's gonna, if you're an archery hunter and your first week is obviously coming up about a month sooner than your general season for gun, practice. I mean, get out and get the reps through your bow. Don't, and it's like I always say this to people. I was like, you want to study all year round. Mm-hmm. You don't want to study right before the test and expect great success, right?
Yeah, an A+.
Yeah, and so it's kind of the same thing. Get out, put in the repetition. I understand it's hot and people don't want to get out in the afternoon and go shoot, but you got to get out, make sure everything's on point, it's consistent, you're shooting good. For one, it helps build your confidence so you're not second guessing when in that heat of the moment. And and another thing I'll do is I'll run sprints and then shoot my bow, because that way I'm shooting at an elevated heart rate, and you're getting the closest to what that real life situation is going to be when you're having that adrenaline dump, and you're trying to hold that bow steady. You're trying to hold it. It is tough, and you don't realize it until it happens, and you can only control that to a certain degree through experience.
Yeah.
But until you've shot so many deer that where you're kind of like, okay, just you go through the process. New hunters, I would say, need to do that.
Yeah.
Because regardless, you're going to get the adrenaline with it, because it's archery and it's tough, and you're close to a deer, like extremely close to a deer. And so it just adds a heightened, sense of craziness. But that extra repetition of practicing that way will make that experience so much easier than just going completely bonkers, like in that moment, to where, you'll see it.
Everything you learn just...
Yeah, people are shaking so bad. They're just completely missing the deer, or, shooting it like way, way off the mark. And, and that's not a good situation either. So really the thing you can do is just prepare the best you can. And right now is the time to do it.
And get reps in the red zone.
Absolutely.
With being in Texas, target-rich environment, and get reps in the red zone, and that'll help you get ready.
For sure. No doubt.
Well, Chad, man, I appreciate you hopping on the podcast. I think we're going to go shoot here in a little bit, so we needed to go fling some at the practice range.
Heck
but
yeah.
I really appreciate you taking the time to come and hang out with us here at TAC this weekend, and talk Pnuma with all the customers and everybody that walked by. So
absolutely, buddy. Appreciate you having me on, man. It's been a blast.
I'm sure it won't be the last time, man.
Right on, brother.
All right. There you go, folks. Another conclusion to another great episode from the Geared for the Outdoors podcast. We just want to thank Chad Jones, Pnuma Recon Team member, for hopping on with us and just getting to sit down, talk deer hunting, some deer hunting tips, tactics that Chad uses throughout the year, why he does certain things, just getting to kind of pick his brain a little bit about that. And then also just getting to talk to Chad about what it means to be a Pnuma Recon Team member. You know, we get asked a lot throughout the year, like, how do I get on the Recon Team member, from a lot of people? And, you know, it's not an easy task to get onto our Recon Team. And so Chad was able to just dive into it a little bit, talk to us about what it means to him. And so we just want to thank him for hopping on the podcast with us. Will the Thrill signing out on this one. Thanks for tuning in, everybody, and we'll see y'all on the next one.